the MMA Roadshow, episode number 89. My name is John Morgan. Cold coffee? Well, cold coffee's not sitting here with me. To be honest, nobody's sitting here with me. Can you believe this shit? 2 events in back-to-back nights, and I'm not at either one of them. That's right. Not at either one of them. UFC Fight Night 102, Lewis versus Abdurakhimov is in Albany. UFC 206, Holloway versus Pettis is in Toronto. My ass is sitting at home in Las Vegas. I got to be honest with you, I was pretty bummed about it. I know that sounds weird, but I don't know. If you can't figure it out, I'm kind of addicted to traveling and being on the road. It's my groove. It's what I'm used to. And I think that there's 2 UFC events and I'm not going to be at either one of them. Kind of bummed me out. And then I saw how damn cold it is in Albany and how damn cold it is in Toronto. And suddenly I realized, oh my God, things have worked out just fine for me here in Las Vegas. It's like 60-degree highs right now. I mean, at night you got to put on a little, windbreaker maybe perhaps. But other than that, it's gorgeous. So I'm just going to have to live with that. But the MMA Roadshow must carry on. And I know you don't want to see me sitting here for an hour and a half just chilling, talking. That would get boring. So luckily we still got a crew on the road. First up in Albany, Matt Erickson, our assistant editor, is up there covering UFC Fight Night 102. Justin Park is with him as well. And I thought, you know what better way to get this thing started than just to check in from the road in Albany, New York. Get us a little preview from the ground, on the ground, for UFC Fight Night 102. All right, so Matt Erickson checking in from Albany, New York. I guess first off, Matt, what's going on up there? Have you just been kind of hanging out, enjoying the beautiful weather, kicking it on the patio, having frosty beverages, that sort of thing?
There's nothing else going on here. I mean, according to the MMA world, anyways. No fight card going on here. It's all like 500 miles up the road in Toronto. So poor little Albany, the little fight card that could is what I'm going to be calling it the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, I wonder. That's what's weird because I tell you what, it's funny. I mean, we've been doing this for a couple years now, where the UFC has done 2 events on one day, and we've been found a way as an MMAjunkie team to spread ourselves thin and cover it. But damn, I feel like this Albany card is even going more under the radar than when we have those 2 events in one day. I feel like literally nobody is covering this card.
I feel bad for Albany, but it feels like we're just kind of fulfilling an obligation here. Okay, so it's like, you know what? We came up here all the time for years, and we were lobbying. We were bringing all our stud fighters up here, and bringing Ronda up here, and Mark Ratner was coming here, and Lorenzo was coming, and Dana. Everybody's coming up here and begging the assemblyman, hey man, look, you got to get this sport passed. And we promise as soon as it goes through, we're not just going to go to Barclays. We're not just going to go to MSG. We're going to come to Albany and Rochester and Syracuse. So I feel like this is like, well, we got to do it. We told them we were going to do it, so we got to go to Albany. So let's just get it out of the way. And we got to fulfill some Fight Pass, deals too, because we got to hit our numbers for that. So let's just throw a card in Albany and we'll throw it on Fight Pass and let's just move on. You know what I mean? Like, I feel really bad for the fighters that are on the card by saying something like that, because there's some really good fights on the card, but that just is kind of what it feels like to me. And sometimes I think that's just the business of it, and it feels like that's the reality.
Yeah, that's actually great. I hadn't thought about it that way. That's a great way of putting it. Well, I do want to ask you about the fights in just a second. First, I guess one more thing about the card itself. I don't want to pick on the UFC or wonder, but I got to think the staff has got to be run a little bit thin up there, right? I mean, all these layoffs that we've had up there and, well, not just up there. I mean, layoffs that we've had everywhere, and now 2 events, splitting the staff in half on a weekend. Are people kind of running around with their heads cut off a little bit?
No, it actually seemed pretty calm and normal. You know what I think helps though too? This is the first time we've had an event where we have the official weigh-ins in the morning, but no ceremonial fake weigh-ins in the afternoon. So, this was like as soon as everything was wrapped up this morning, I kind of felt like everybody's like, "Shit, man, what are we going to do for the rest of the day?" Like we're done at noon. We're not done at 7.
Such a game changer, man.
What are we doing? We're like let's go to the mall, or it's not where are we going out to eat and where are we going to go get a beer. Where are we going for lunch? so bizarre. And obviously, like, that's not the reality in the MMAjunkie world. It's like, okay, let's go back and do fight photo galleries and, you know, highlight videos. But for the UFC staff, it's like, hey, it's lunchtime.
That's funny. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that's a good feeling. They had that in Australia recently. That felt good. I will say this. I think we're the only traveling national media that are there, but it sounded in talking to Justin the other day, who was up there shooting with you, that the local media actually turned out pretty decent.
Yeah, there was quite a few. There was probably like 6 or 7.
Wow.
Between TV and print. So, hey, man, kudos for those guys. That's fantastic. It helped us, you know, yesterday to not have to work as hard, because you know just as well as I do, we've been to events where you know the PR staff has asked us in advance, like, hey, just want to make sure you're coming to you know, to the open workouts, right? Because if you're not, we actually might not have open workouts.
Yes, that is
Please
true.
let us know that you're coming. And in fact, you know, just between us and whoever's listening, a couple weeks ago, I was told, hey, give me a list of who you want to talk to, because I don't think we're going to do anything at all.
Wow.
They weren't going to even do workouts. That changed, you know, at some point in the past couple weeks. But at one point, I had a list into the PR staff that was, all right, here's like 8 guys that, you know, 8 people on the card that, you know, that we'd come to the hotel and get if you're not going to do anything else. Very, very bizarre. And that's what contributed to me thinking, you know, early on that this was kind of the forgotten show.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, you touched on it, the weigh-ins. You know, just official weigh-ins. It sounds like that's the way it's going to be for Fight Pass shows moving forward. Fox doesn't pay for the ceremonial weigh-ins for the Fight Pass shows, so WMEIMG says we'll save a couple of bucks. There's no sense in setting up a stage at the arena or anything like that. But I wanted to ask you what it was like this morning to have the official weigh-ins, and then I guess, did they hold everybody, or did fighters leave and then they came back? Because then you guys did get the face-offs as well, which gave us that beautiful moment of Joe Silva being wedged between Anthony Hamilton and Francis Ngannou.
So beautiful, so beautiful. Poor Joe. Yeah, so, like, you know, the first 10 or 12 fighters, I think we had 18 fighters actually out of 24 on the card. First 18 were done in 23 minutes.
Wow.
Okay. So, and the last was Justine Kish, who couldn't make weight, and she weighed in like literally like right at 11 o'clock, like at the, you know, right at the buzzer. So we're talking like an hour and 37 minutes where everybody else is sitting around waiting, I guess, to have to come back, you know, down to the ballroom or whatever to do the face off. So yeah, I think everybody just kind of went and chilled and got some food and whatever else, and then had to come back for the face-offs.
Well, it definitely ended up with some fun moments. I guess the guys that kind of stole the show were probably Mark Diakiese and Frankie Perez on the prelims. Was that the one that stuck with you the most?
Did not see it coming. They were, you know, they were nose to nose, and then just out of nowhere, you know, Diakiese's finger is on Perez's throat basically. And then the shove just like shoved him right out of the frame. So that was good times. And that's, I mean, that obviously took Joe Silva by surprise. It took Big Steve from the UK office, who's over here helping out with the show. That took him by surprise. He had to, you know, grab Perez right away. And yeah, that was good times. So at the very least, we know the prelims are going to have, you know, a nice little grudge match.
No doubt. That's got some flavor to it. I know all week long you've been kind of tailing both Corey Anderson and Sean O'Connell. We knew you'd have some fun stuff with Sean O'Connell. He did not disappoint, passing out the candy canes and dressing up as Santa Claus like he likes to do. But, you know, he had a great interview with Ben Folks this week, you know, admitting that this is kind of his whole career's on the line. And then you got Corey Anderson, who's kind of had some ups and downs. Looks like he's got some greatness in him, you know, at least some talent in him, but has had some setbacks along the way. So, you know, kind of give me your thoughts on that matchup. I know this is a main card where it seems like damn near all of us pick the exact same fights in our staff picks that you so lovingly put together every week for us. But well, what are you thinking about this Corey Anderson Sean O'Connell fight?
I think it's a great fight, and I do feel a little bad for. I feel bad for picking against O'Connell now, actually, because we weren't supposed to get him as part of the workouts yesterday, but he was kind of hanging around. So I said, "Hey, man, come over and let's shoot the breeze for a little bit." And I actually hadn't read Ben's piece yet, but Sean, told us the same thing. Like, hey, man, look, if I lose this one, it's 3 in a row, and that is probably my career. That's it. This is my career if I lose. I'm like, well, hold on. Like, let's pump the brakes for a second here, because it's not automatic that you're going to get canned with 3 losses. He's like, yeah, but, that's kind of the magic number, and that's usually what happens. And I'm like, well, what happens, though, when you got guys that they really like the way they fight? I mean, you've got, like, 3 fight of the night bonuses, and they obviously like you. So you see guys stick around with 3 losses in a row. So O'Connell's a guy that you kind of like to pull for, because he's fun and he's friendly and he's smart and he's outspoken. And, like you can have a conversation with him. He's not kind of a ditz. So I do feel bad that all of us picked against him, but he's like, Anderson's like a 4-1 favorite for a reason. The guy's a stud. He's won. Well, he really should have won 4 in a row. I think we scored that Shogun fight for him down in Brazil. Does that sound right?
Yep, so, I believe so.
He's got a kind of a hump to get over too. And when we talked to Corey, I couldn't believe this either. And again, this is my bad that I didn't read every single story that's ever been on MMAjunkie, but apparently he came on the radio show after that fight and said, you know what, man? Like, I was cool with losing to Shogun until I watched the fight, and then I was really pissed off. So we kind of rehashed that conversation, and I didn't know that he basically just like went away. He was like, yeah, screw this. I'm not gonna make my paychecks come from somebody else's opinion, so I'll probably just quit. And he lived with his parents for 6 weeks, and then had to, they got on him and were like, dude, when are you going to train again? I think they were probably like, get out of our house.
Oh, man.
So it's a really interesting fight, because you've got a guy who just a few months ago was ready to quit not because he lost, but because of the way he lost, and because of feeling that, there are forces that can work against you if they want to. And then you've got a guy who's afraid that if he loses, that's it. He's going to get cut and he's just going to walk away. A lot of drama.
It's a tough one, man. 2 good guys, man. 2 guys I really enjoy talking to. It's funny because I almost picked O'Connell. I really did. I feel like you said, the way he fights, man, he can scrap. He can come in and make it dirty. And Corey Anderson didn't fight as aggressive and as good as I thought he won the fight against Shogun, but I did think he left something to be desired there. And but I don't know, man. It seems like Anderson's hungry. O'Connell, I agree with you. I don't think he's necessarily done if he loses. He's in a division that's not that deep. He's a great representative for the sport, I think. He's a good dude. But yeah, man, it's a tough fight. It's one of those ones, not that you're pulling for people. Obviously don't cheer for people, but I don't know, man. You can't help but develop kind of personal feelings and relationships towards guys, and I just feel like these dudes are both like good dudes. Like I'm like cheering for a tie or something.
Yeah, and you know what else is crazy? And we think about this all the time. So Sean O'Connell's lost 2 straight fights. If he loses, it's 3 in a row. But in Ottawa over the summer, that fight against Steve Basse, he really felt like he won. So, I mean, that was really, if you go back and look at, like MMA decisions, I think 8 people had it for O'Connell and 7 people had it for Steve and 5 people had it a draw.
It's close.
You do not get any more down the middle than that. And if he wins that fight, we're talking about, hey, you've won 3 of your last 4.
That's
like
nuts.
You beat Corey Anderson. You've won 4 of your last 5. You're getting on a roll. You've got fight of the night bonuses in there. Now you're talking about like, hey man, maybe you're ready for that next step up. And instead, we're listening to him talk about, yeah, man, like I guess if I lose, like everybody expects me to, then I'll just be hosting my radio show in Salt Lake City.
Fuck, it's a rough game, man. It's a rough game.
Insane, man. It's insane.
All right, I don't want to take anything away from Anthony Hamilton, because Anthony Hamilton has shown some toughness, but obviously a lot of people are hype about Francis Ngannou, and the guy has looked like a prospect. Did it surprise you at all that they didn't include him in any media activities? I mean, I know his English is limited. I mean, he does speak it, but it's not great. But I don't know, man. I was kind of surprised that he wasn't trotted out this week in front of anybody, because I feel like he's got some real talent. Yeah,
he's a stud, and again, I think that just kind of shows you this poor little card that could. Like you got the co-main event. It's like, yeah, we'll just put the main event guys out there, and then Guys from New York. We'll bring guys from New York.
I know it is.
And that's what they did. So it's like you got a guy who hasn't done anything but knock people out. And yeah, sorry, man, we don't got enough people who speak French around here. So we'll just leave you over there.
If only you could have been fighting in Montreal, you would have been much better off.
You would have been great then.
Is he scarier with the dreads or without?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think you know me. Like, I'm follically challenged. I'll go with anybody with no hair any day of the week.
All right, let's talk quickly about the main event. Derek Lewis, Shamil Abdurakhimov. Of course, everybody's leaning towards Derek Lewis. He's become everybody's favorite fighter, and he does have some real talent, man. I mean, he's shown the ability to get back up off the ground when he's been taken down by people. He's shown the ability to defend takedowns. So he is kind of a throwback fighter as far as I'm concerned. He's kind of old school, but I do think he's got maybe more skills than I originally gave him credit for. But it seems like everybody's just writing Abdurakhimov off here, like he doesn't even belong, like this is some gift for Derek Lewis. But I don't know. You got a chance to watch Shamil up close during his workouts. I don't know how much of an effort he put into it, but what are you thinking? Is this a chance for Shamil to kind of come in and ruin the party, or do you think this is a good setup for Derek?
I never hesitated in picking Derek Lewis. I don't think probably any of us did. And then I went and I looked at the odds. He's only a 2-1 favorite. Okay, so that to me is one of those ones where you go, you know what? There's a reason that I get paid to write and edit and take pictures, and I don't get paid to make odds on fights. And these odds makers are usually pretty good, okay? I know we kind of rag on them and say, hey, man, like MMA is where you can make some money betting on sports because they don't know what they're doing quite yet. But they really kind of do. So there's a reason that this fight is as close as it is, and like the Ngannou fight is, more of a blowout, or Corey Anderson's more of a blowout. So that concerned me that I was that quick to just automatically pick Derek Lewis. But I think it's because we watched the way he's beat some of these guys. He just kind of destroys them, with the exception of that Nelson fight. And when you watch Shamil, he's like kind of grinding some guys out, and his wins are decision wins, and you're going up against a big dude who just levels people. I'll take him pretty much any day of the week.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think that's the right call. I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm looking forward to it. I think, honestly, this is, as you said, all the attention is on Toronto, but I think there should be a couple fights that should at least be fun. I mean, anytime you have a heavyweight main and co-main with sluggers like that, it could suck, or it could be like a really fun, violent end to the card, and I think that might be what we're in store for.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some sleeper fights on this card, and I think we'll look back on Sunday and say, you know what? Maybe that Friday night show was the better show.
Yeah, you never know,
that's
man.
That's what I'm hoping for. But I'm greedy. I'm a little selfish. I'd rather watch fun fights than watch boring ones. So.
Awesome, brother. All right, man. Well, I'll let you get back to the. I'm sure there's a ton of just nightlife you can't wait to get to there in Albany. So we won't keep any longer, man. I appreciate you checking in.
Thursday night in Albany, everything closed at 9.
Awesome, brother. All right, man. Have fun at the fights, and obviously we'll talk online.
See you soon, brother.
Yeah. So Matt Erickson checking in from Albany, New York, keeping it real. The card is flying a little bit under the radar, no doubt about that. Not getting a lot of love, not getting a lot of attention. Like I said, unfortunately, most teams aren't as big as ours and don't get an opportunity to cover both. They have to make a decision, one or the other. And certainly, I would understand why you would cover UFC Fight Night 206. Certainly get that. UFC Fight Night 206? UFC 206. You know what the hell I meant. But we're covering UFC Fight Night 102 as well. At least it's on Fight Pass. You're going to have some quick fights, which I love that Fight Pass pacing, man. You can't beat that. I guess I'll have 2 fights going on at one time because Victory FC is also on Fight Pass as well the same night as UFC Fight Night 102. And I got to say, I will be watching Peter Petty's is on there. If you guys remember, long-time hardcore listeners, Peter Petty's is a guy that I had a chance to call under the Titan banner, and I like this kid, man. He's young in his career, but I think he's got a hell of a lot of talent. So excited to watch him fight. So I guess I'll have 2 windows going over. Can you even have 2 windows open with Fight Pass? I've never tried that before. Hopefully you can. You can have 2 things going simultaneously. I don't know if it's some kind of security thing that's not going on. All right, listen, man, we started teasing this thing as being all coffee, no cream. But you know what, cold coffee, man, he's working hard. I'm not going to take away from him. He's working hard, but you know, as soon as he gets done working, he's not worried about it. He's not worried about the MMA Roadshow. I'm just telling you, listeners. I'm keeping it real. He's not worried about you. I'm worried about you. He's out having some frosty beverages. So I'm going to track his ass down up at Toronto. Don't believe that. I know he's trudging through the snow. I've seen some of his pictures. He's trudging through the snow. But in the meantime, check this out. Submission Underground is happening this weekend on Flow Grappling, Flow Combat, Flow. You know, they got like Flow everything. Not what you would call a pay-per-view event. They do a subscription service. So I guess if you just wanted to pay for a month, I believe it's $20. But submission only. In the main event, they've picked some big names. Jon Jones and Dan Henderson. The fight that was supposed to be at UFC 151, of course, it never happened. Dan Henderson got injured. Chael Sonnen stepped in as a late replacement. Jon Jones infamously turned it down. And now, as it would turn out, Chael Sonnen is now going to promote the grappling match between Jon Jones and Dan Henderson. So, listen, this morning there was a conference call held for a select number of media people. I was able to jump on this call, and I figured, you know what? Let's hear a little bit from Jon Jones. Let's hear a bit what he's got to say, a little bit from Dan Henderson as well, and a little bit from Chael Sonnen. Just hearing the promoter in him, man, that guy is so good. We're going to get to see it again in a couple of weeks in January, of course, with him hyping up his Bellator fight with Tito Ortiz. But just listen to this man and see if he is not a born promoter. I don't think the guy ever should have been fighting, to be honest with you, man. This dude is a born promoter. So had a little bit of my conversation with all 3 of those, just a quick snippet of the call, and then left a few more questions in there with Jon Jones, because it's always interesting to hear what Jon Jones is up to and to hear what he says he might do next in the grappling world.
Hello, and welcome to the pre-event media conference for Submission Underground 2, presented by Flow Sports and Chael Sonnen. At this time, for opening remarks and introductions, I would like to turn the call over to Mr. Chael Sonnen. Please go ahead, sir.
Hey, guys. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. This is the official media call. We have Dan Henderson and Jon Jones on the line. They will be the main event this Sunday, December 11th, at Portland's Roseland Theater, presented live at flowgrappling.com. The window to watch will start at 2:30. The main card will go live at 3. That is Pacific time, 6 o'clock Eastern time. And we look forward to your questions.
And we'll now take our first question from John Morgan with MMAjunkie.com.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'd like to start with Dan, if I could. Dan, obviously retirement to you does not mean what it does to other people, maybe sitting around and that sort of thing. I'm just curious, is this is remaining in competition like this something that you anticipate yourself doing, or was this kind of a one-off opportunity that just presented itself that made sense?
Yeah, I wasn't looking to do this. Chael called me up and presented me the opportunity to do this, and I thought it'd be fun and a way to, I guess, keep motivated to stay in a little bit of shape. It's and with the history of the one fight that I had to pull out of in my whole career falling through, and it was supposed to be against Jon Jones, I thought it'd be fun to at least grapple against him.
Yeah, no doubt. I was going to ask you about that. I mean, of course, this is being marketed as the fight that never happened at UFC 151. I mean, will this help address that hole? I know you said, kind of in some of your last fights, you said you always regretted that didn't happen. I mean, do you think this will kind of address that and put it behind you, or is this, something totally different and won't be able to address that for you?
Yeah, no, it's obviously not a fight. It's not in the UFC for a title, but it's something I prepared for and felt really ready to fight, and never got to happen, and at least we'll get the grappling part of it handled here, I guess.
No doubt. And if I could quickly for John, John, I know that, obviously it's been kind of a tough stretch for you lately, but can you talk about what this means to you? I mean, is this just a fun little side gig and something unique to do, or is this kind of maybe more important because this is like your only outlet for competition right now?
Something to keep me busy, something to keep me active. Had a long layoff before fighting over in St. Croix, and wasn't my best performance, and so I'm really trying to just keep my competitive spirit alive and stay familiar with that feeling of competing and things like that. So I'm excited to get out there and just fire up my competitiveness.
Yeah, and I know Dan had mentioned before, he got criticism and, he had to pull out of this fight and always wanted to address it. I mean, you got criticized after 151 as well. Is facing Dan, at least in a grappling match, something that you felt like needed to happen in your career? I mean, had you thought about it over the years as something you really wanted to do?
I don't feel like it was something that needed to happen, but it's something that I'm certainly glad is happening. I've had the opportunity to compete against a lot of the greatest fighters, ever. Excluding, I guess, Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, Dan, and Tito. Outside of that, I've beaten everybody already. And so to get one of these legends under my belt is going to be great for me. I'll be able to tell my grandkids about it one day.
Very cool. Thanks, John. And just quickly for Chael, if I could, please. Chael, I'm just kind of curious to get your vision for what you see as the future of Submission Underground. I mean, this is two, huge names in the world of MMA, and it would seem that marketing to MMA fans would be the best way to get this out there. But you've been around the sport long enough, too, that sometimes, when the fight hits the ground, that's when the crowd start booing and asking for a stand-up. So I just wonder, how big you think this can become and kind of what you see as the overall vision for this promotion.
Yeah, we like exciting matches, and particularly when we've got big matches. I mean, a lot of people are arguing that right now Dan Henderson should be the world middleweight champion. A lot of people made that argument, including one of the judges that night. John Jones is the single greatest talent this sport has ever seen. So you've got the parity to get guys like that together, and they were supposed to go at it before. I don't care if these two are arm wrestling. People are going to tune in to see it. As far as excitement goes, and we always want excitement, it's an 8-minute match. Now, there is an overtime format, but in 8 minutes, neither guy is getting tired, neither guy is stopping. They're going to be going the whole time. And I can tell you, as far as the idea of getting grappling going, we didn't reinvent a new iPhone here. Okay, this isn't some kind of genius idea. It's an 8-minute grappling match, and this is what these guys both come from. So many people wonder, how far could John Jones have gone in wrestling? Don't forget, he went to the highest level that he was eligible for when he was in high school. Highest thing he could do is win a state championship, and he did. When he was in the junior college, the highest thing he could do was win the national title, and he did. He then changed sports to become an undefeated world champion in that area. Dan Henderson made 2 Olympic teams. I was there when he was named Outstanding Wrestler at National Opens before. I don't even know how many titles he's won in that. So we took John Jones's greatest weapons away, the 86-inch reach, the diversity and surprise attacks, the creativity of his elbows and knees. We took Dan Henderson's greatest weapon away in that big right hand that he's put so many people to sleep with, and sent them back to their roots. As far as people want to see John, this is an experiment, and we really don't know. I can tell you every indicator we've got has been positive. This venue is completely sold out. Outside of the NCAA tournament, I don't know of a grappling tournament or a grappling event that's ever sold out. I don't think the Olympic Games for freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling sold out. It could have, but I don't know that it did. We've got a huge buzz going for these two. And they got a great supporting cast too. Jeff Munson and Warren Brooks, the big match. Jessica Ai and Misha Tate is the big match. But this match was supposed to happen. It was supposed to happen 3 years ago. These guys both want to wrestle each other. They're both being very nice and sportsmen today, but this match matters. It matters to them, and it matters to our community.
Thank you very much, Chael. I appreciate it all, gentlemen. Good luck.
Hi there. I just got I'll start with a question for John. John, I'm curious, regardless of how this goes, Who else would you like to see Submission Underground bring in for you to grapple in the future?
Well, I kind of put a little thought into that. It's funny you asked. I'm worried that I may be a little heavier than Dan. So I'd like to maybe challenge a heavyweight after this to see how I stack up against a guy who's much bigger than I am. No one in particular, though.
Okay, yeah, I think everyone's always wanted to see you compete at heavyweight in some form, so that would definitely be interesting.
And John, you mentioned everyone wants to match make for you now that you're doing this grappling match. You said maybe heavyweight. I am just kind of curious because another wrestler that you do have a history with that would be an interesting grappling match. Would you have any interest in maybe grappling Daniel Cormier at some point in the future? Considering you did have quite a bit to say with the wrestling and the match you had with him, would you ever consider that as a grappling match?
Man, that'd be a hell of a match. But no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't want to play with Dan with Cormier at all. Me and Cormier's storyline is so big and important to me, and I wouldn't want to give him any false sense of security or anything. I just want to kick his ass with my hands and feet and elbows and knees.
So leave it up to John Jones, always available to work in a little jab at Daniel Cormier, verbally or otherwise. But no, it's interesting. I will be watching this on Sunday. I think we will have results on MMAjunkie. I mean, these are big enough names. I think people probably care about the results of this, even though it's a grappling match. And so I think we'll definitely have some results on MMAjunkie. We're kind of talking about it today. But one way or the other, I'll be watching. It does cost $20 for 1 month, I believe $150 for a year if you want to subscribe to their full service. It's interesting because, grappling is not always the most preferred aspect of mixed martial arts. It's just not. I mean, for the casual fan, even for the hardcores. I mean, I think, obviously true hardcore fans can appreciate what's going on there in the jiu-jitsu and the grappling. But, I mean, listen, two people just throwing down in the middle of the cage, swinging until somebody falls down. It's exciting. Whether or not it's technical or not, it is exciting. Can they do something here with Submission Underground? We'll see. We'll see. On a pay-per-view format, it might make it kind of tough, but you get big names, man. You get John Jones involved. You get Dan Henderson involved. Man, that's a hell of a statement right there. So, Miesha Tate is grappling Jessica Ai on this thing as well. She's over in Singapore, so she hasn't really been available to do a lot of promo work for it, but pretty incredible stuff. I'll say, Abu Dhabi, every time there's a notable mixed martial artist that goes and tries their hand at Abu Dhabi, I always, make sure and watch it. It makes me perk up a little bit more than it might just to see some jiu-jitsu, world champions go at it or whatever. Something about the crossover appeal just kind of does it for me. So, interesting to see how they do. All right, now we have to go up to Toronto. Cold Coffee is not going to get out of this week's podcast that easy. He's trying to just chill up there in Canada, north of the border, drinking those Molson Canadians, I'm sure, or whatever else he can get his hands on. I will not stand for this. This is an injustice. I will not let him get away that easy. So I had to check in with him and let him tell us what's going on in Toronto. Welcome to the show, a guest this week. The man who is, it was supposed to be all coffee, no cream. He's supposed to be handling business up there in Toronto. Instead, he's sliding, he's ducking, he's got things to do, he's busy. And now I can just barely track him down as a guest of the show this week. Cold Coffee. What's going on, man? How's Toronto?
Toronto's good, man. It just snowed. I tried to put a video of it on Twitter, but it didn't really come off because camera is not quite as good as your eyeball, but it was neat, man. It was just snowing, dog. It was cool because I was walking over to the restaurant to grab something to eat. Or let's be real, it's a bar around the corner. I was going to get beers and hope for bar food, but it was snowing, so it literally stopped me in my tracks. I'm an Ohio boy, so we have a history with winter and with snow, but being out in Vegas now for so long, you don't get it. It kind of stopped me in my tracks. Beautiful. It was cold as shit, but it was beautiful. Just kind of watching it come down. You had the water in the background, and then it slowly got in. But it was neat, man. I've been here in Toronto before when it snowed, and it was cold then too. But I'm telling you, I always tell people it's nice to visit snow. You know, it's better when you don't have it dumped on you and you have no choice about the matter, and you're stuck there in it. So it was good. It was beautiful. But yeah, that's my story for tonight, man. Got to see a nice little snowfall here in Toronto to kind of keep the fun Fight Week festivities going on, and it's been fun so far. It's been fun.
That's good. Well, I talked to Matt Erickson a little bit earlier tonight. He was kind of saying in Albany, it's the kind of the card that time forgot. Nobody's even really giving it any attention, and I think I think even less so than when we've had like 2 events in one day. You know what I mean? I feel like for whatever reason, we've had the dual events in one day, and they get better coverage than this has. So, but it looks like you guys are actually getting some coverage out there in Toronto. People are paying attention, and it seems like it does have that, even though it doesn't have GSP, and even though it doesn't have some other fights that were trying to be lined up for it that just didn't come through. It does feel like it does kind of have that big event feel. Am I right, or am I feeling it wrong from Vegas? It seems like there is some buzz.
There is, and even here on the ground, you kind of get a feel. And I think that's just a credit to Toronto and a credit to Canada in the fact that they do love UFC. There was a Raptors game going on tonight, and it was cool. It was on the TV at the bar I was at. They're doing throwbacks. So they had like the Toronto Huskies version, which Toronto Huskies played here back in the 40s.
Oh, wow.
So at first I was totally fucking confused. I was like, who the hell are the Huskies? I'm like, wait, Toronto's got 2 basketball teams? I'm like, no way, this market, and then it forced me to go online and do all that shit. But the reason I say that is as I was coming up to my hotel room tonight, there was a guy that was coming up that was at the game tonight, and Dana was there in attendance, and I guess they made an announced him as one of the special VIPs in that house tonight or whatever. So Dana got some love there at the Raptors. So, and I know fighters went there the other day. There was the hockey team played, which is slipping my head right now. Toronto has a hockey team.
Maple Leafs.
The Maple Leafs, yeah. I guess they lost, but I guess some fighters were there last night and attending that. But no, it's good. I mean, I think people are talking about it. I think they just give it a lot of love because it is a UFC. A lot of them don't even know who the main event is, but they know that there's a fight going on in town, which is cool. They're at least paying attention to the fact that it's here. But are they being bombarded here because there's some big names? Like if a Ronda was here, I guarantee everybody would know Ronda's here because every news outlet would be saying it.
Mm-hmm.
There has been some local news guys that have come through and doing it, but there's plenty of the regular traveling media is here as well. Fighting's here, Sherdog's here, some other fun fans are here. Jim Edwards, a big favorite of MMAjunkies here. Let's see, but quite a few people. But people are talking about it on the ground. And after watching the weigh-ins today, or not the weigh-ins, the media day playoffs tomorrow morning, early morning, we'll have our weigh-ins here. It's neat to see all the people that are here. People are definitely talking about it. Maybe it's because it's a pay-per-view. People are giving it lots of love. Where New Albany or Albany doesn't have it. I'm sorry, I said New Albany. That's a place back home. Sorry, Albany. It's unfortunate, because even the last time when you're referencing 2 fight nights or 2 nights of fights, those are 2 fight nights, and they kind of got mediocre love, but they still got love. But I think it's probably hard for an event to compete with a pay-per-view, whether it's not a big marquee pay-per-view. But they are competing against a pay-per-view in a huge market for MMA. Toronto's got to be, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's got to be the biggest market in Canada. So it's got to be tough that to compete with that. But Toronto's definitely giving them some love. So it's cool. It's neat to see. Granted, I haven't interacted with too much of the public because most of the events we've had so far, outside of the open workouts, has been closed to the public. And even at the open workout, there was some people there. It wasn't packed, but there was a good amount of people there that went to the Massey Hall, which is kind of, I guess, has a lot of history. It's a storied theater in downtown Toronto, which was kind of neat. I do applaud the UFC. They find some unique places that I probably would never ever get a chance to go too when we come into town. So it was neat that they picked another locale that has a lot of history to it.
The little bit of sightseeing you get to do, basically.
The little sightseeing. It's like, hey, did you see something? I sure did. I saw this storied theater that happened to be the open workout. Oh, I didn't catch any plays or musical acts. I just caught an open workout there, but it was good. It was good to see. You know, the public came out. It was neat. Every fighter, after he did his time, made time to come down and stand on the aisles, and the fans came down and got to have a lot of pictures and autograph signing that you don't normally see at a lot of these open workouts. I mean, it does happen to a degree, but nothing like this one was. You know, pretty much Cowboy didn't even work out, so he had, for the most part, a 30-minute autograph session that went on that was kind of impromptu, that kind of rewarded the people. A lot of people don't do those things. They don't do the open workouts, you know, because they probably think, oh, it's just watching the guy work out and do whatever. But it was neat. This was an instance where the people that actually went out and watched got rewarded because and they pretty much got to get pictures and autographs of any of the fighters that were there. So it was kind of neat. It was good. So I applauded the peeps that came out. So I haven't heard too much about the Albany, but I doubt there's fans that are clamoring through the weather there to get like they are here.
Well, I did want to ask you, it's in you know, talking about the excitement and all that. What's the vibe been like around Tim Kennedy? You know, obviously he was a big part of that Mixed Martial Arts Athletes Association, and I saw that he's kind of backing off a little bit and even kind of distancing himself from Bjorn Rebney, who we'll talk to in a little bit as well. But just what's the vibe around him? Is it tense? Like, are people like kind of uncomfortable around him? I saw, you know, you guys put up video of Cowboy kind of stepping back a little bit and saying that he was going to get with Dana and work it out and all that. But I know Tim is a little bit stronger in his ways sometimes. I just wonder, has it been an uncomfortable situation for him at all out there?
No, and everything I've heard from what he said in that interview was that everybody's treated him with utmost respect. That's one of the things. I mean, I know we say it a lot of times. I mean, and people want to say whatever they want to say about the UFC as being this big monster, you know, and does whatever. I mean, when you step out of the fact of what they're paying fighters and all that stuff, the staff that are working for them, they don't make that decision. That's from people much higher paid than the people that are on the ground working with these guys. And the people that are on the ground working with these guys are some of the hardest working, nice people that you know. And these are not the kind of people that they're going to hold a grudge for. Like, I can't believe Tim Kennedy is trying to do this. You know, these are the people that are like, I know Tim. Tim's a nice guy. We're going to do the fight. They're going to do a job. They're not going to do whatever. And Tim made it seem like everything's been fine. The only point I saw where there was like an awkward moment, because I guarantee it was the first time they were in close proximity, was when Dana was doing the face-offs and Tim and them come up for the face-off. there was like an awkward moment of like the handshake and then like the sideward glance sort of thing that kind of happens. And
like, good to see you. Yeah, good to see you too. Sure.
Yeah, like go back and look at the footage and look at like that awkward, like tense moment. I mean, it was cool and cordial, but it was like, you know, Dana was very reserved in his words. There wasn't, as far as I know, there wasn't like a, hey, what's up, buddy? You know, blah, blah, blah. It was kind of a more like a Tim came up and they were kind of just standing. Dana just like, all right, hey, face off, guys. You know, like all about business, you know, and it wasn't the small talk that you would normally see. So you can definitely see that, you know, there's a stiffness in the air with the relationship. But that's, I think, maybe just with like a person on the level of Dana's level and Tim. You're not going to see that from the PR guys. You're not going to see that from the operation guys that are back in the back, nose to the grind, the grunts, the people that are doing, you know, the heavy lifting on the small end. You know, you're only going to catch that from the big guys that probably have a stake in the company, you know, and know that these guys are going to take away a percentage of their money. You know, the little people are going to get their money regardless. You know, they're going to get their paycheck as long as they keep doing their job. But no, it's been fine. I mean, Tim is so well. I hate when people say so well spoken, but that motherfucker's so well spoken. Yeah. You just hear him answer his shit, and you just want to side with him. You want to go all in, and I have the utmost respect of him for his military career and things he's done in that sort, you know, even outside of his fighting. So he could really do no wrong in my book for the most part, the things that he's done for this country. But I can tell he's taken it as serious And from what it makes it seem to me, like after this fight, dude's going to go all in and get gung-ho on this MMAAA and really start doing the things to try to get it off the ground. Do I think it's losing steam? No, because he even kind of sidestepped the whole thing about the cease and desist. He had a great answer and pretty much told about, here's another little side group that's trying to get their piece of the action. Oh, there was something in the response to that, and I was going to ask you about that if you caught into that. It was one of the first times you hear them admit, but in the letter that came back from the PR guy of the MMAAA and their answer to the cease and desist, where it talks about how they finally, you see them mentioning how they're trying to get a percentage. There will be a percentage of that initial big payout of the money that is going to the fighters of the past.
Yep.
And all that to cover the staff and the lawyers that they've been using to get this going. So it kind of feels like, in the sense, like you got the guys that one side are having a class action suit trying to get as much money so that they could get their percentage to give to the fighters. And then here's a group, the MMAAA, saying, well, screw those guys. They're just a bunch of guys trying to get their money and then help a small group of fighters where, here us, we're trying to help every fighter. But of course, yeah, we want our bit of that money as well.
And get our money also.
And get our money, yeah, where they finally had it in writing,
Yep.
in their little statement, and, I kind of want to know, what's that percentage? Are you willing to go on record to say what it is? Because I guarantee if it's a large enough amount, people are going to start saying, well, shame on you.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the whole thing about it, I think there's good goals for everybody involved, but it's not charity, man. Nobody's doing this for free. I mean, there's a reason that people are jumping on it, and I don't think it's for the greater good of the fighters. So hopefully, though, maybe some of these selfish, I don't want to say selfish, I mean, hopefully some of these financial goals at least help the fighter out as well along the way. I mean, if these things can get done, I think it would be great. So, all right, listen, I want to ask you about, it seems like every fight card, the media kind of keys in on one person, and they kind of become a media darling. And this week, man, I kind of feel like it's been Doo-Ho Choi, man. I know the guy doesn't speak English, and so it's not like there's a ton of interviews going around. But, man, it seems like everybody's writing stories and tweeting and whatever else. And I think you and I have been there for all three of his UFC fights so far, and he's looked fantastic in every one of them. And the guy really is, at 25 years old, a star. But I'm just seeing a shit ton of media coverage out there. Are you kind of sensing that buzz? This guy feels like he's kind of being the media darling this week, so to speak.
Well, I'll tell you, you know how it is when you go in there and they have a room full of empty chairs and signs, and if you get there early enough, you kind of pick your spot. So initially, as soon as I got in there, I saw Tim Kennedy, and I was like, all right, let's get the big one taken care of right off the bat. So of course we set ourselves right in front. That was our go-to first one. But what surprised me was that the only other one that had multiple people waiting was Doo-Ho Choi.
Wow.
I was like, are you serious? I started looking over to Chris. I was like, wait, does he speak English? I was like, why are there so many, media jumping on it or whatever? And he had to translate it. But no, people love the dude. I mean, I kind of feel bad for old Cub because, people are either sensing that, this is the next big thing, and he's already planning for when he beats Cub and moves on and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, we didn't actually. We had a kind of agenda. We were trying to go down the one side, and we really wanted to hit the MMAAA guys today and hit Gastelum on his weight thing and Jordan on his return. It's tough, man. It's another instance where you have so many guys and an hour to do it, and then when you have guys queued up on some of the main ones, it's really, really tough. So luckily, we got to some of the guys last night, so we didn't have to do it today. But
right.
Yeah, we never got around, and he had a queue for most of the day. So
that's
yeah,
awesome.
dude.
So
his star is definitely rising.
You're by the way, you're going with MMAAA. Is that what you're going? I haven't decided yet. Abby Subban chimed in the other day with MMAAA. I kind of like that one.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot easier than keep saying all those damn A's, man. It's like the MMA, or something. Yeah, it's like because you start counting all the A's in your head every time I say it. So MMAAA is, I guess that's not bad. That's not bad.
I like it. All right.
That's just a Londoner trying to find an easy way out, man. That's all it is.
I should reset here though for listeners of the show. This is our guest Cold Coffee, who's joining us only briefly on this week's episode, despite being on the road all week and me sitting at home in Las Vegas. Talk about the main event. A fun main event. Are you getting a feeling from either guy? Are you eating? What are you eating?
I'm opening up my baguette. I'm ready to start breaking into some of my snacks that I had. And for the listeners that know, I have a spread. I got a date night with myself in my hotel room. I got a baguette, a big white, a big old baguette. I got me some brie cheese, a little jar of Kalamata olives, a little bit of this hot mustard, and some Hungarian salami. That is my dinner for this evening.
I heard Hungarian salami was your nickname in high school.
It was. I ate a lot of it. Yeah.
All right. No, Holloway versus Pettis, man. Holloway just seems to be oozing with confidence, man. This guy, he's on such a roll, but, man, he really seems to be oozing with confidence in everything I see. Meanwhile, Pettis, I mean, he had a great fight last time out. I don't know, man. He's in kind of a weird spot. He's been dealing with all that stuff around his house, man, with his cars being burned, and I don't know. It seems like he's in a weird place in his life. But crazy to think that Pettis is technically on the verge of a little bit of history as well. You know, becoming another guy to be a 2-division champion, would only be the 4th person to do it. I don't know, man. Are you getting a feel? I know, we don't normally technically break down fights or anything like that, but we always talk about kind of what we're feeling and things that we're getting out of the conversation. Are you feeling vibes from either one of these guys?
I mean, Max is probably as at ease and even keel for this one. I mean, he's always a pretty laid-back dude, but he is pretty amped up for this fight, so I'm excited to see. Honestly, I know there's a lot of shit going on with Anthony's life or whatever, but he's kind of seemed, I don't want to say out of it or sluggish. But the flight sometimes, depending on what it is. I mean, he got here later in the evening for his flight arrival, so I'm not sure if he didn't get much sleep the other day. But he just his energy level hasn't quite been there, so I'm a little worried about that he's maybe something else, if it is something external from himself or something is weighing on his mind. Hopefully that gets cleared up. But Max looks good. He looks big. So hopefully everything's all good on him. He's never had a problem with the weight, so I'm not too worried about it. But he looks really, really refreshed. He's got good energy level. The only thing with Max is that, he keeps wanting to throw out this Jose Waldo shit, and I love him for it. But I hope he's not falling into the pit of looking past his opponent, and you never want to look past, especially Anthony Pettis. I know he hasn't looked as of lately as great as he has at his peak, but he's still super dangerous, and he still has everything there to possibly win this interim title, not the main title, but the interim title, because it's weird that there's an interim title thing. But I think it's going to be good. I mean, Anthony always comes up and he always brings it. If it was going to end something quick, I think Anthony has a good chance. But I think if it goes later into the rounds, I think Max has more in the tank going into it. And I think he just has more weapons all around. I think he's good. He could take the kicks. He has his own little sort of thing. So I think he kind of negates, or if anything, there's a balance when it comes to the striking. But I think he's just a little bit better if they get into the close quarters, and they actually get hands on him. I think he's going to wear it out. But if anything else, just looking at him energy-wise and their level this week, Max just seems on a different level. He seems on a higher playing field right now. And if that shows in the fight, he's gonna come out with his hands up. But you never know. Anthony could just be reserving it. He's been through this a lot of times. He's been the main event. He's done that sort of thing. So he might be kind of holding back and holding his cards pretty close to his chest, that he doesn't want to show too much. So
yeah, I don't think
people are excited about it.
I was gonna say, I don't think that weight cut's a lot of fun for him, but you might be right, man. I don't think he's enjoying 145, but the kid's your baguette rapper. I'm going with Holloway too, man, and I love his trash talking, man. I love his vaccine for the pussyitis, and now he's talking about where's Jose Waldo and all that, man. It's I love it, man. The kid's coming into his own, man. It's been fun to watch him grow up right in front of our eyes, man. So, all right, well, listen, it's been fun, Cold Coffee. We'll have to have you on this program again sometime. You've been such a fantastic guest.
I enjoy being a guest. I enjoy being a guest, yeah. You sound different over the phone. Your voice isn't quite as powerful over the phone as it is in person.
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's not bleeding over my mic like it normally does.
You're a jackass.
Go eat kind of interesting.
Go eat your baguette and your Hungarian salami.
And my Kalamata olives. This is fancy. I got a fucking spread, man. It's fancy night. I got a view of whatever this body of water is right here that I'm next to, and yeah, good times.
You suck.
Good times.
You suck. So Cold Coffee checking in from cold Toronto, Canada. I'm kind of bummed I'm not there, but man, like I said, that snow, I can't deal with that. I am not a cold weather dude. I am living in the right place in the desert. So listen, had to get a little bit of Cold Coffee's casual conversation and thoughts from the road. Listen, I want to share something else here as well. I had a chance to sit down earlier this week for an extended conversation with Bjorn Rebney. Of course, Bjorn, the former head of Bellator. He's now not heading up the Mixed Martial Artists Athletes Association. At least that's what he says. It does seem like he's taking a little bit of a leadership role. It does seem like he's been kind of meeting in this. I don't know. I still have my questions. We did play some highlights from the conference call last week, that 2-hour-long conference call that I was on. But I still had a few questions, and I wanted to be able to answer myself or ask them myself and get the answer directly myself. And had a chance to sit down and talk to Bjorn Rebney, and it's tough because I think a lot of people still say, well, he's hiding some things, or he's not being completely upfront about some things, and it does still feel like there's some unresolved questions and some concerns with motivation and that sort of thing. But I just figured, hey, let me ask what I can ask. Let me lay it on the table and at least get the answer straight from the horse's mouth, get it directly to me, see if I could kind of, maybe pull a few more words out of him here and there, and I think we got a couple here and there. It's interesting, Donald Cerrone's already kind of backpedaling a little bit. You saw up in Toronto this week saying that, yeah, you know what, man, maybe he did jump the gun a little bit and didn't really mean to be on a board, just thought he'd kind of help out and lend his voice to something that he thinks is true. Tim Kennedy is saying that he's not necessarily the biggest fan of Bjorn Rebney's approach to how he's doing things, so we'll see. It feels like the tide is changing in MMA. It really does. It feels like the fighters finally believe that not only does this need to be done, but that they can do it, that they don't have to be worried, that they have the power to do it. But I don't know, man. If everybody's moving in different directions, I don't know how you get everybody on the same page. And that's always been the question all along. How do you get everybody on the same page? And, man, this one came out and made a big, big splash. Having current names involved, I think that was big. But can they get everybody on the same page? I don't know. So I thought I would play for you guys my extended conversation with Bjorn Rebney and let you just hear what I heard and let you kind of weigh in for yourself. Oh, and I should also say big thanks to Bjorn Rebney for being a good sport. I did ask him as condition of our interview if he would be sure to explain the genesis of that famous June 2014 tweet. Mexico!
How'd you been?
Good, man. I've been busy, as I'm sure you've been following along. It seems like this MMA world just keeps getting busier rather than slower, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, it's good. I think it's getting busy right now in some really important directions. So that's all good stuff,
It is. It definitely is. All right, well, listen, a deal's a deal. So before we get too far into the important stuff, a deal is a deal, and I got to know. Tell me about the Mexico tweet. I got to know the whole story, where you were, why you sent it out, and why it was your last tweet for a couple of years.
So simply put, I was sitting around not long after Tim and I left Bellator,
and I was watching Mexico play the Netherlands in the World Cup. And, I mean, like, this story is, like, going to be such a letdown. It's just like a dramatic jump off a cliff for what it should have been given the life it took on. But so I'm watching Mexico versus the Netherlands, and a bunch of my buddies are from Mexico. And they're, like, huge fans. They've got, like, the jersey on and all the shit. So we paused the TV for a second, and I don't remember if we were going on a beer run or what, but we paused it, and when we turn it back on, Mexico had scored, and the Netherlands was, like, supposed to be this rock star team. So we all start freaking out. So I'm like, fuck it, I'll tweet. And I tweeted Mexico because we were watching the game. And then I realized when we hit, like, we were like, oh shit, we're like 30 minutes late in the game. So it was like, okay, nobody look online, don't fuck this up, because there were like 10 of us in the house. And then the Netherlands came back and beat them 2-1. And like everybody was totally bummed, and everybody went home, and it screwed up our day. But that was like my last tweet. And it was so screwed up timing-wise that I was like, you know what, I'll just stay away from Twitter now until I have something that actually matters to talk about. So that's when I got back in. But it was like, I used to watch it and just be like, oh my God, there's just like such a life that's come around this one tweet that had nothing to do with anything except the World Cup.
Phenomenal. That's phenomenal. I tell you what, man, every time I've gone down to Mexico in like the 2 years since, I've always made it a point to retweet that and just say, I'm going to find Bjorn while I'm here.
That's hysterical. Yeah. I haven't been to Mexico in like 3.5, 4 years, but my buddies were just like going insane. So that's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the whole truth.
That's fantastic, man. I appreciate it. All right, well, let's get into the MMAAA. First of all, just let me apologize. I didn't get through the other day. I was on the conference call, and I'm assuming it was my phone. I'm hoping you guys weren't shutting me out. I think I had some kind of issue with my phone that I couldn't get through there, but definitely was not trying to just keep you all to myself and not participate in the call. But I definitely do appreciate you scheduling this extra time so I could follow up on the questions that I still had.
Yeah, no problem. I know for a fact that you were in the queue in like the group of top 10 people, top 10 media members, because I looked at the queue of people that were in up top, and I saw you, and then like you didn't ask a question, and like 2 or 3 other people that were on the call, no questions asked, and in the queue in like the top 10 didn't ask questions, and I was like, wow, that's weird. I wonder if it's that either there was something wrong or they couldn't, like, because they were right up top. So.
Awesome. All right, well, the first thing I want to ask is just kind of get into your motivation and kind of where you stand right now, because, not that we don't ever change sides or play different sides of a position over the course of our lifetimes and the way we change things throughout the world, but, I mean, it's not that long ago that you were involved in a lawsuit and keeping Eddie Alvarez from, going over to the UFC, and it would seem to be, now you're in a position where you're kind of trying to fight the man, but you kind of were the man for a little bit. So, personal feelings aside or anything like that, I just wonder, kind of where you get to where you are now, how you get to be on this side of the position, and really just moving forward, how you kind of reconcile those two positions. Not that we can't change ideas, but, there are going to be people that point to where you stood and what you did, and how do you kind of reconcile that to now being, involved with the MMAAA?
I think that the cleanest answer to that is just the answer that jumps into my head the second you ask the question. I mean, one of the more disappointing things that I experienced at Bellator was that a business decision I had to make screwed up my relationship with a guy that I had huge respect for and that I liked a lot. People forget, but when I signed Ed coming off the Joaquin Hansen fight, I mean, I was like a step away from going to Japan. I was like, I drove all over the place. Like, nobody here had the enthusiasm for Ed Alvarez. He was just this little known, but I thought potentially the greatest lightweight on the face of the earth that I desperately wanted to make like the marquee guy in the organization. And I could see building off of a guy like that because I thought he was so incredibly talented. And so, Ed and I in the infancy stages of Bellator and over the first few years, we developed a really good relationship. And I used to call him and say, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? So, running a business and running a promotion is, it's a difficult job. And not every decision that you have to make is going to be a decision that, that everybody's going to agree with, or that everybody's going to perceive that, that it works the way that they would like it to work. So, when I look at this thing, John, I look at it from the perspective of where's my experience, what have I done, what do I know in terms of the business and the law and all the different facets of the mixed martial arts industry and the fighters, and what have we put together over the last couple of years, and then why am I in it? What is it that makes me in this? Why am I in it? What's the emotional motivation for me to be in it? What's fueling my fire to be in it with George and Tim and the guys? And I look at those, I look at my past in mixed martial arts, and I see it as an advantage. I see it as a CV and a resume that helps me be better prepared than anybody else to help change the really, really screwed up shit that is going on right now in this space as it relates to, WMA, IMG, UFC. So that's basically it.
Well, I definitely think you are uniquely qualified to take part in a position like this. I got to ask, I know you said you're basically, working pro bono right now, and this is a bit of a passion project for you, but, I imagine you can't do that forever. So are you hoping to take a paid position with this organization once everything gets rolling?
Look, I'm in a very fortunate spot. The sport was good to me, and I think that's part of the motivation, part of the stuff that drives me right now is it was really, really good to me, but, nobody, I never took flying knees to the face. I never got knocked unconscious in a third of my fights. That never happened. So I'm in a position over the last couple of years in putting all the pieces together, getting, George and Tim and Kane and Cowboy and TJ and getting the attorneys on board that basically wrote the book and getting the PR firms and the marketing executives and the strategic alliances, getting all that stuff in place. I've done all that on my own dime. And then when you launch something like this, the essence of it should go, and the cost structure should go toward the organizing team and the marketing team and the social digital team and all the different pieces to that machine that have got to work in great synergy to make this thing successful as quickly as possible. There's no question in my mind we're going to succeed and we're going to win. The question is, how long does it take? So for the time being, the way we're structured right now, I'm not taking any salary at all. And, could that change in the future? Yeah, potentially, but I want to hit certain benchmarks. I want things to get accomplished, and I want the money right now to go toward our organizing team and the people out there in the field and the marketing and public relations people and the strategic advisors and the strategic teams that are helping us make all this work. Because this is not a one-round fight. This is not going to be easy. William Morris Endeavor just paid $4 billion for this, and they want to keep perpetuating the same business dynamic, the making money hand over fist, the hundreds of millions of dollars annually in profit. They want to keep that going. So they're not going to release the rear naked choke on that easily. They're not going to call us and say, hey, we heard your interviews, and while we don't like you very much, we really want to get this resolved. How do we fix it? They're not going to say that. They're going to fight. So, I'd rather put our effort and our energy into that than I would put into me at this point.
Interesting. Well, I hate to pry too much, but I think people want to know kind of what your motivation is. I mean, at the end of the day, most people are motivated by money. I mean, listen, I love what I do for a living. Absolutely love it. It's my passion. But if I wasn't getting paid for it, I'd have to find something else to do, unfortunately. And I think people just want to know where you're coming from. I mean, I know I do. Not that money would be a bad thing. We all need money to survive. I mean, if your motivation is money, that's fine. But are you saying this is more charity than anything, and that if you never draw a paycheck from this effort, you're okay with that?
You and I have done interviews in the past, and I remember saying it to you because I said it to a lot of people, and I used to say it pretty regularly, and that was my job in the past was one, I used to always say, if you can get paid to do what you would otherwise pay to do, you've won in life. And that's a quote that I used to say often. There was that, and I'm striving to not be the smartest guy in the room. And I can remember saying that a lot because it was like they were two tenets that I lived by. Mm-hmm. So, I'm one of those freaks. I've got Pride VHS tapes in the garage, and I don't have a I don't know if anybody even fucking sells VCR machines anymore, but I have the fucking tapes just in case. Like if somebody comes back and goes like the retro record players came back and everybody was all stoked about that.
Sure.
And my wife looks at me and she's like, "What are you keeping that shit for? Like, there's no such thing. There's not even a DVD player anymore. Like, why are you keeping VHSs?" And I'm like, "Because that's some great shit from Pride, and I don't want to get rid of it." And I watched that shit, and I loved it years ago. And so the attachment's still there. But I think the two drivers, for me, the reason that I spent the last 2 years working on this, putting it together, structuring it, flying to Montreal to sit down with George time and again to structure, meeting with Tim time and again to structure and get everything in place, putting the teams in place. The reason I spent all that time is basically twofold, and they're both pretty simple answers. One of them is I've been around, and I don't, I didn't go great deep dive into my history when I launched Bellator many, many years ago, but I've been around the fighting sports and I've been around combat sports athletes since I was 6 years old. My grandpa Milton used to have Mexican and Central American boxers who he managed live in our house when I was a kid. And so, like, for 44 years, I've known professional fighters. My uncle went into the fight business. My uncle had fighter after fighter after fighter as clients and did volunteer work for the Boxing Hall of Fame and different organizations. So I've had these guys around me since I was really young. In that, I've seen these guys progress, and I've seen them hit retirement, and then I've seen them hit 30 and 35 and 40. And more clearly than anybody, I shouldn't say more clearly than anybody, but more clearly than most people, I've seen the results that fall on the heads of a lot of fighters, a frighteningly large percentage of fighters. I've seen what repeated blows and 30 professional fights where you suffer 4 or 5 knockouts and training every single day and the repetitive brain trauma that you suffer sparring every single day. I've seen what that does to guys. And I am acutely aware because some of my family, friends, people that I cared about and that I loved have suffered the consequences of that. And I can tell you, I know exactly where we're headed in MMA because I've looked at the real studies. I've looked at the medical reports, at real substantive studies from real substantive sources. So I know what's happening here. And I'll defend to the fucking death guys' rights to assume that risk. I think football players should be able to do it. I think mixed martial artists should be able to do it. I said it on the call. I believe in the sport. I love the sport. But when you're a company that makes $600 million per year and you have projected and achieved a 50% margin on $600 million, to pay the guys 8 cents on the dollar is criminal. And to provide no health care, post-retirement, no pension, no safety net, no retirement plan, no say in drug testing. I mean, there's no protection mechanism at all in place for these guys. So having been a guy who grew up around it, having been a guy who got a master's degree and a law degree and then built 2 combat sports businesses, and to see what these guys have to look forward to is just wrong, bad, horrifying. And so that's part of the motivation. The other part of the motivation is pretty simple. The other part of the motivation is up at the top of my list are 2 groups that I hate with a passion. One of them is racist, and one of them is bullies. And they're bottom feeders. They're like the worst of humanity. And WMEING UFC conglomerate, they're bullies. They may not be bullies with their hands or with their feet, but they're bullies with money, and they're bullies with power, and they're bullies with influence. So that motivates me because it gives me an opportunity to fight against that and to put together a structure and a real strategic initiative to defeat it and fix it. So those are 2 huge motivating factors. And that's what's driven me for the last couple of years. That's what's driving me right now. That's what's put me on planes to go up and meet with fighters on Thursday and then again on Saturday. And that's kind of the driving force behind what I'm doing.
Well, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing that. And you kind of touched on there a number, and maybe it doesn't really matter because I know that it's nowhere close to the 50% that's being paid in other sports. But you guys have thrown out that 8% number as the amount of gross revenue that's being paid to the fighters. Just curious kind of where you guys got that, because I've seen industry estimates in the past, of course, but because they're a private company, we've never been able to get Zuffa's full book. So where did you guys get this number? Is this just a working estimate that you're throwing out there, or is this something that you've been able to substantiate?
Well, it comes directly when we're quoting numbers, we're being very careful, and we're being careful because we want to be completely accurate. So when we talk about the amount of money that UFC fighters made in the last year, those numbers come directly from what they have reported. And when it comes to the numbers that, when I say they, it's WMEIMG UFC. And when it comes to the numbers in terms of what they spend and what they spend money on and what they have organized as their priorities. I mean, look, John, there's a few things that I'm good at and a whole bunch of stuff that I'm not. But due diligence and research and an understanding of my opponent's position is something that I'm really, really strong at. So it comes directly from them. And that's what makes it even that much more frightening when you look at the real numbers and you look at what they're honestly spending their money on and how much they're spending. And that 8% number is a verifiable number. The only piece that's not in that 8% number are the pay-per-view participation bonuses that, 6 or 8 guys in the entire UFC get?
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of real numbers, in terms of, show purses and win purses across the full spectrum, that's an honest-to-God number. And 8% is just, look, there's a well-known Major League Baseball player working with us here, JP here at CBS, and he's awesome. And the first thing JP did is he sat down with me and he goes, I can't believe what you're telling me. That the UFC is worth, multiple times more than the Yankees or the Dodgers or any team I've ever played for. And he said, I need to see this in black and white, because what we have set up in baseball for each team is heads and tails, like cavernous distances better than what these guys have got. And he goes, dude, nobody's ever punching me in the face. I've never been knocked out. He said, the worst thing that can happen to me is I get hit in the head with a fastball. He said, but this is shocking. The guy is, he's taking trips with me. He'll be out all week. A legitimate major leaguer who is a spokesman for the Major League Baseball Players Association for his team. And he's like, this is criminal, man. We got to let people know what's going on here. So, they're real legitimate numbers that come directly from the horse's mouth.
So I guess, knowing the business of the UFC as intimately as you do, I think they've always had the position that, yes, they make money, but they also reinvest in a lot of it. They've helped grow it. And I think even you would have to respect the effort that they've put in to help grow the sport, to help get it legalized, to help get it accepted mainstream around the world. But knowing their business as good as you do and as intimately as you do, if they paid that 50%, because I doubt anybody wants to see, especially fans, want to see the UFC just go away. So if they were paying that type of money, if they were paying out that type of revenue, would that put them in danger of not being able to be profitable, of not being able to run a business because the payouts were just too much of the revenue they were bringing in?
No, absolutely not. John, you in sports have answered your own question. The percentages in Major League Baseball, the NHL, the NBA, and the NFL are 50-50 splits. That's the way it works across every other sport. Robert Kraft, who owns the Patriots, isn't owning the Patriots and running that organization so that he can have a tax write-off for a loss. NFL owners make money. NBA owners make money. And they're operating at a 50% margin. Plus, there's pensions, there's retirement, there's disability. You realize that this is the stuff that nobody is articulating, which makes me insane. You realize if a Major League Baseball player signs a contract, let's just say young, great pitcher signs a 4-year deal for $50 million for the Dodgers. The next day he walks onto the field and is injured and can't continue his career. He gets paid every penny of that $50 million deal.
Wow.
Okay? Now, the margins that the UFC, the WMEIMG UFC are operating at are ridiculously above the margins that Major League Baseball operates at. And yet their contracts are guaranteed. So here we have a sport that you and I love where guys are risking everything. And I don't mean that like in terms of hyperbole. I'm not, like, oh, they're risking everything. No, they actually are risking everything. They're risking the health of their mind. They're risking their bodies. They're risking everything, more so than any athlete, including football players. But there's no protection. There's no disability. There's no contract guarantee. If Tim Kennedy's getting ready for his fight this weekend, and Tim Kennedy blows out a knee, he doesn't get paid. He doesn't get taken care of. He doesn't get disability while he rehabs that knee over the next year. He gets nothing. If he can never fight again for some reason, there's no pension benefits. There's no safety net. There's no post-career health care, so that if he's got to deal with injuries or much more serious than a knee blowout issues for the rest of his life, there's nothing to protect him. And look, I get it from 20 years ago. I get it at UFC 1. I get it when the initial investment happened that you wouldn't provide that type of a dynamic. But Lorenzo and Dana have been making money hand over fist for over a decade. Their margins have been margins that anybody in any substantive business would kill for year after year after year. Dana and Lorenzo, in a single day, walked away with more money than every UFC fighter in the current stable would make if they fought every year for 82 years. They wouldn't equal the amount of money that Dana and Lorenzo personally walked away with. The numbers, I say this stuff to people, and I know when I say it, people go, that probably doesn't make sense, but it's real. And so that again, that's where my motivation comes from. That's where the drive comes from, because I just know it's wrong, and I was in it, and I saw it all firsthand. I know how the pay-per-views get structured. I know what the distribution is. I know how the money comes in. I know what percentage they get. I know how they cut their closed circuit deals. I know what their sponsorship deals look like. I know what Fox is paying them this year and what they're making next year from Fox. I know what they're looking to get Fox to climb to. I know what their international deals look like and how they're structured and what the contracts look like, because it did it. And it's just evil. It's just evil. And it can be fixed, and they can make money. They can make a profit. And they deserve to make a profit.
Well, listen, I mean, I don't think that anybody can question what you guys are trying to accomplish here. I mean, if you can do what you say you want to do, I don't see how anybody could say it wouldn't be great for the sport and for the fighters involved. To have, pension-type plans and things of that nature would be fantastic. But I do wonder, I mean, you guys made such a big splash. That, I mean, the call was fantastic. I think the involvement of current fighters made it very, very important and made it seem bigger and made it seem more real. But I do wonder. I ask around, and after the call, the week since or whatever, I ask around and say, fighters, managers, whoever else, try to get their reaction. Try to understand, kind of what they think about it. And I think that, and I understand your position, but, about not going into battle and laying out everything that you're going to do and letting your enemy know what you're doing and all that. But I think because of that, a lot of the reaction that we've been getting is, I just don't know yet. I don't feel like I know enough yet to know about whether or not I can, stand behind this and put my weight behind this organization. So I guess my question to you would be, how do you combat that, number one? And I mean, do you think it's fair that people are saying, listen, I don't know if I can support this organization just yet, because the truth is, I don't know exactly what the hell they're going to do yet.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you got to look at a few things. You got to look at the fact that I was asked to become part of this 2 years ago. And subsequent to being asked to become part of this by people that I've got a lot of respect for and a lot of belief in a couple years back, we've got, 5 huge names from the current roster, and I consider George to be part of the current roster of top-name mixed martial artists out of the UFC. You've got the best attorney in the history of this area of law, a guy named Jim Quinn, who basically has written the book on major decisions and fights with the NFL. You got 2 strategic PR firms, one that handles general market PR and one that handles sports-centric PR. You got a series of marketing specialists who are working with us across multiple platforms. You've got a group of a half dozen key strategic advisors that crisscross the land of sports and entertainment. You've got the money, the monetary support, a top-tier organizational team, And then, people say, lay out the structure. Well, again, just like you said, we're not going to lay out what we're going to do next, but strategically there's an organizational strategy in full swing. There's what we call an external media strategy in full swing being implemented by a group of a half dozen people. There's an entertainment-centric internal media strategy being executed simultaneously. There's a series of attacks being focused strategically on WME, in terms of where their vulnerabilities exist. There's general market star athlete support that's going to be unveiled over the coming months. Big name athletes from the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and the NHL. There's a complete safety net and fallback legal strategy being implemented by Jim Quinn, who is, you can just Google Jim Quinn sports antitrust and you can see exactly what he's done, what he's accomplished. The New York Times says he's changed the face of sports. There's social and digital initiatives. There's strategic alliances. There's an entire licensing program that's being launched right now to benefit the association athletes. There's a lot of pieces to this infrastructure. Now, how each one of those key strategic initiatives is going to be implemented is obviously something that you would never divulge. But those are just some of what we're doing strategically. Those are just some of the pieces that are already constructed and built for this. And this is, like I said, it was 2 years ago when I was initially approached. And I was happy. I wasn't fat and happy because I was actually able to train again, so I actually got into better shape. But I was happy, and I was doing some cool shit, and I was working on a really cool tech project that I liked a lot. I was working with a group on an OTT platform development that I really thought was cool, and I was spending time with my beautiful wife and my kids. But the last couple of years, I've spent an enormous amount of time on this. Jumped on a lot of flights, met with a lot of people, talked to, like we talked about earlier, one of the things I used to say all the time is, strive to ensure that you're not the smartest guy in the room. And that's one of the things that I've tried to put into play here, is put some really, really smart people in play who understand how we're going to need to unveil this, how we're going to need to attack, where the vulnerabilities are, et cetera. So, it's in a very, very good spot. It's where it needs to be, and it's going to be and I'll shut the fuck up because I'm talking too much. But it is not an easy fight. I was reading a report, and this is a little bit off the page, but I was reading a report from a major medical journal, and it was a psychological report that was done on people, and the report said that a majority of Homo sapiens would fight harder to protect their assets than they would to protect their own well-being. So when I go into something like this, the WME IMG conglomerate led by Ari Emanuel, they bought a cash printing machine. And then they went out and sold that cash printing machine to a bunch of high net worth investors who bought close to $2 billion in debt. They're not going to easily step away and relinquish that stranglehold on that type of profit-making machine. They're not going to step up and say, you know what, not providing pension benefits for athletes who give up more than any athlete on the face of the earth, oh, you know what, we'll just do that. They're not going to say that. They're in this for the money, not for the love of the athlete, not because they used to roll for years and they just fell in love with it and decided to make an investment, not because they used to watch, Boss Rutan on the ground against Frank and slapping each other open fists, not because, they're not those guys. They're not in it like I was or you are. They looked at it and they said, my God, this thing is an absolute profit-making machine. We can make it make even more money. But they're not looking at it thinking to themselves, how do we pay the fighters more? They're going to have to be guillotine choked into that, screaming and kicking. But fortunately, we're prepared to do that.
No, I really appreciate it, Bjorn, and you're definitely not talking too much, man. I always appreciate the insight that you can offer us. So last thing I really have for you, Bjorn, any concern at all on your end about the fragmentation that could potentially happen? I mean, as you know, of course, there's plenty of other efforts out there ongoing, and they've all had kind of varying degrees of success. And you guys have come in and made a really big splash. But is there any concern that with multiple people moving in multiple different directions, that people are going to kind of throw their support behind different organizations and different efforts, and then all of a sudden, fighters fail to organize just because they're looking at different ways of organizing?
No, and I'll tell you why. The union alternative today, right now, is a horrible strategic alternative for UFC athletes. It is an absolute no-win, bad option that will have horrific results for the athletes today. Now, I got to explain that a little bit because I don't want to have that taken out of context. The essence of it is this: UFC athletes are independent contractors; they're not employees. And so, if you try to form a union right now, the UFC will just sit back on their hands, do absolutely nothing until a year and a half from now, when that organizing campaign could or might manifest itself into a lot of people being engaged. And then they'll immediately file suit in Nevada to enforce the terms of their agreement with every UFC fighter, which are independent contractor agreements. And they'll probably win that fight 9 out of 10 times, which means that UFC fighters, if they followed or pursued a union alternative today, would waste 4 or 5 years fighting about what they're called before we ever get the chance to step into the cage to fight about what matters, which is compensation levels, percentage of gross revenue participation, and benefits, and a settlement. So the union option, just strategically, is at this stage is a horrible idea. Now, bringing that full circle, and this is where it gets a little confusing from a legal perspective, but it's accurate. When we drive the UFC to the table to work out these issues, they will eventually say to us, during the latter stages of that negotiation, we need you to become a union. And that's happened throughout the history of sport. Associations become unions, and they become unions so that the group, in this case the UFC, can establish what's called an antitrust exemption. And it's legal language, but ultimately what will happen with us is when we are finalizing the negotiated resolution of all of these issues, including the large payment amount that will come at the signing, including the very substantially enhanced participation in gross revenues, including pension and health care and a say in drug testing policies and a neutral arbiter and all the different pieces that we'll negotiate, the UFC will say, okay, all right, we're in agreement. Now you guys got to become a union because we want the antitrust exemption, because we want to, for whatever the term of that collective bargaining agreement, we want to ensure that we are protected against independent lawsuits on these issues. And we'll, at that stage, we'll present it to the board, and George and Tim and Kane and TJ and everyone will look at it. We'll explain it. We'll have our attorneys there, and they'll say, okay, great. Yeah, we'll turn into a union. That's fine. So it will eventually happen, but it'll be a settlement. It won't be up front, because doing it up front delays the process. The other group, it's a real simple analysis. The other group is a group that obviously doesn't have this level of support or this fighter engagement or this level of athlete involved. The problem is, why on earth would you give up 33% of your money to a bunch of lawyers from Chicago and San Francisco and New York and Philly who have no background in the space, no experience in our game, have never been engaged in MMA in any way, shape, or form from a business perspective, until you've fought like dogs for an extended period of time trying to resolve the issues before filing suit? The first thing that Jim Quinn, who's our attorney, said to us is, my God, with all of these different initiatives and the marketing people and the PR people, everything you're doing with the fighters you have engaged in the strategy, there's a very, very good chance you will be able to win this without having to file suit. So why in the world would you give up 33% of it? Why would the athletes give up a third of what's theirs to a bunch of attorneys? Win it without us. And look, Jim's been around these type of conflicts for 3 decades, and so his resume, his CV is finished. He's the best that there ever was at this. He doesn't need to make huge percentages off of the backs of athletes anymore. He has his legacy established, and the first thing he said to us, he said, "You guys with the people you have on board and the strategy you have in place, you can win this before filing suit. Give that a very substantial run first, because it'll put considerably more of the dollars into the hands of the athletes than it will into the hands of a bunch of shiny suit-wearing attorneys.
Welcome back to the MMA Roadshow. There you have it, Mr. Bjorn Rebney, head. See, I said he's not the head of the mixed martial arts. Sure damn feels like it. It sure feels like it. A very involved advisor who is very passionate about what he's trying to accomplish with the Mixed Martial Arts Athletes Association. We'll see what happens with that. Like I said, I do feel like the winds of change are blowing, but I don't know if this is the organization or not. I guess we'll find out. All right, well, listen, we've checked in from Albany. We've checked in from Toronto. Cold Coffee has been lazy. No, I'm just taking a shot at him. He's got to edit this bad boy. I got to get this audio to him. He's got to get together. So after he appeared on it, now he has to edit and put everything together. I hope you guys enjoy the fights this weekend. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We're going to right the wrongs next week. Myself and Cold Coffee will be back on the road, Sacramento, California for UFC on Fox 22. So that way I won't be sitting here in a house by myself not knowing what the hell to do. Then it's Christmas, but I'm not doing anything, so we'll probably just do something anyway. I mean, might as well, right? What else is going on? And then after that, UFC 207, and then we just start 2017 all over again. We're busy planning right now. We're getting all the travel booked, all that stuff. It's going to be another exciting year, of course, for MMAjunkie and the MMA Roadshow. Hey, I forgot to say anything all along, so just do me a favor. Go log into iTunes, rate us, review us, leave us a review. I'm always happy to read those out. It makes me feel good. I'd like to know you got some feedback, positive or negative. Mostly positive, of course, but, leave us some feedback. Other than that, I'm just saying thanks for listening.